This is Keith Price's Curtain Call. This is Keith Price for the Curtain Call. And again, we're out and about having a time, and it's like part 2 now of my on-location excitement, hanging out at Jamie DeRoy's apartment with the fabulous view. And some of you may not know who Jamie DeRoy is, and for that I say shame on you, because how do you not know who she is? If you say anything about you like theater in New York, don't tell me you do not know who Jamie DeRoy is. Producer, actress, singer. She is, got her tone. I was looking at her Tonys when I came into the apartment. I was trying to be very nonchalant. Like, oh, look, she has her Tonys right there. But yeah, she got Tonys in her house. That's how she's rolling, people. So again, and at the same time as she does all of this, she has a wonderful collective that she has made into something that has been truly it's something that people talk about, at least if you're not on the list to know who Jamie DeRoy is, but you certainly should find out who Jamie DeRoy and her friends are. And every so often, these things just pop up. You do these wonderful things at the Birdland, and she has another one that's coming up April 17th at 6 o'clock at Birdland. It's Jamie DeRoy and Friends, and you might have heard me talking a little bit before to Brad Oscar, who's going to be one of the performers that's doing that as well. But she's got a pretty fabulous list of folks. Mr. Howard McGillen, who I just saw the other day, and Kenjay. I love that. It's like, this is a name that under no circumstances you have no choice but to be in show business.
Exactly.
And Kenjay.
Or did she create it for show business? This I do not know.
But she's going to come and she's going to be turning it out, though. Corey Kahaney. She's a comedian coming.
Corey Kahaney is hysterical. And Brad Oscar you spoke to, and David Friedman, unbelievable songwriter. But also we've added Robert Creighton, who's starring now in Cagney, and he's just amazing doing that show.
I'm supposed to be working on, because I'm fascinated with that.
It's just a terrific show. It's over at the upstairs at the West Side Theater, and. Bobby Creighton, he is, you almost forget that he isn't Cagney.
Wow.
He looks like him. He's dyed his hair red. He taps. He's pretty special. And one interesting little side note on that was that I did a show at the Friars Club. I co-produced it with this woman, Laura Slutsky, and I had this idea to do it as a family show. And so we had, mothers and daughters, and I had a grandmother and a grandson, different relationships. But then I said, George M. Cohan was kind of like one of the first members of the Friars Club. So, and Bobby Creighton does all these George M. Cohan songs because he's going to be doing the show Cagney. And he was doing it at the York at the time. Right. And so I had him as a guest, as, kind of as George M. Cohan. Haley Swindle was also on the show. Her grandfather, George Steinbrenner, produced George M. on Broadway. I mean, I didn't even know all of these little... And in the audience was Ricky Kane Larimer. She saw Bobby Creighton that day, fell in love with him, went to see Cagney, and she's really the one responsible for its move from the York Theater to the West Side Theater. So, I'm glad to be of help in that way when I make a shiddock, as it were. But speaking of family, when years ago, and believe me, it's been years ago, we did a family CD, Jamie DeRoy and Friends. It was the 4th album I did. And we asked Brad Oscar, and he decided that he should have his sister sing with him, Victoria. I had never known Victoria, but they came and they sang a song called Family, and it was written by 2 brothers, my director, Barry Kleinbort, and his brother, Neil Kleinbort. So it was like, wow, brother and sister singing a song written by 2 brothers. And it's such a warm, heartfelt song that it's very special. I love these kinds of things that all, go together and happen together.
I love that. Jamie DeRoy with me here on the Curtain Call. And again, like I said, Jamie DeRoy produces, she is all in the mix of this. And at the same time, it's sort of like, as I'm watching you just talk about these combinations of ideas, is that ultimately what the producer does besides bringing money to the table? Is that helps shape the ideas of
there's
the show?
2 different things, because when I'm producing my variety show. Nobody else is putting like money into it. I just kind of do, do everything. If anything falls short, I make up for it. Right. But when you're doing things off Broadway and on Broadway, there's people that are the creative forces, and every once in a while I'm kind of a little bit in the creative end when I get involved, maybe early on with something. But most of the Broadway things that I get involved with, they're already pretty much set. They're either in the process of casting, or they have been cast, or they had a production out of town or whatever. Then I really don't get involved in casting, and so mostly I'm more involved with bringing money to the table, which is so ironic because I never in a million years thought I was capable of doing that or even would want to. But I guess it was probably sometime in '94, and I'd only been living in this building for maybe 3 years or so. I met Jeffrey Richards, who has his office downstairs. He was a press agent. He still is, but I mean, he was only a press agent then. He invited me to a one-night-only show at Alice Tully Hall called the William Shakespeare Abridged. It was the complete works of William Shakespeare Abridged, and I just went. And I laughed my head off. I'm a very good audience. I mean, if something's funny, I'm going to be laughing. And I'm in the position where people, like sometimes turn around and look at me like, do you have to laugh so loud? But so I went, not thinking anything of it. The next day I got a call, how'd you like it? And I said, oh my God, I loved it. And he says, well, how would you like to help produce it? And I said, well, what does that mean? And he said, well, we would, that was a London cast, and we want to do it in New York with a New York cast. And I said, well, what would I have to do? And he said, raise money. I said, I've never done that. And he said, well, why don't you try? So I tried, and it turned out I was not so bad at it. But who knew? And so that was my first production. It opened sometime in '95, early '95, and that production not only had 2 incarnations off Broadway, first at the downstairs at the West Side Theater, but then later on 15th Street, which sadly that theater, the Century, is gone now. Oh, wow. It's just gone. It's not a theater. It's it's just it's next to the Darrell Roth Theater, but it was a bigger theater, and I forget who's taken it over, but it's not a public theater anymore. But anyway, we did it there. But in the meantime, for 20 years, and it still goes on, even though we don't have any rights to it anymore. Right. All of these licensed productions across the country and in Canada, and it's a very kind of gratifying thing to know that a production that you started it has a life way beyond the few people that could see it every night when it was performing 8 times a week, in New York.
Wow, Jamie DeRoy with me here on the Curtain Call, and again talking about the life of a producer, because one of the things that I like to do with this particular platform is I love to talk to people that do different things in the name of theater, in the business of theater, because I think most people are very inclined to only think about the acting, but they don't recognize that actor without the right kinds of clothes and the perfect hair and the right light hitting them.
Well, perfect example is I went to see, maybe a year ago, a reading of American Psycho. Okay. And it was excellent, and it was choreographed, and there was a lot of movement and whatever, but you're in a rehearsal room. You don't have a set, you don't have lighting, you don't have projections, and I loved it then. And then I went back to an early preview and saw it on its feet. And then when you see it on a stage in this incredible set, you see it with this incredible lighting, incredibly creative and fascinating projections. It was mind blowing. I mean, it's so good. I'm very excited and that's a Jeffrey Richards production. I'm very, very excited for that. And I also am a big fan of Benjamin Walker ever since I saw him do Bloody Andrew Jackson. And, something I was wanting to be involved with when it moved to Broadway, and it just didn't happen. But I think this is actually, the show's happening. Yeah. Is it happening for me? I'm working on it very hard because I believe in it so much. I just love the show, and I love him. I think this kid could be such a star. He's so gorgeous. He's so talented.
Well, he's had a cute run with having that little balance of film work and bringing it back to the stage and film and stage.
Exactly.
So, hopefully that's a great sign of somebody that's going to keep his legs in both, because a lot of people, once they get that movie money, party's over. They never come back.
And he did the I'll be all right, Stephen Colbert show the other night, and they had him at the beginning in a tie and jacket and a suit, looked so handsome, so gorgeous, sat down on the couch. Now, not too many performers get that opportunity. Not too many Broadway performers that aren't of the ilk of Steve Martin. Yes, Steve Martin went on the show, and he and Edie Brickell sat on that couch, and they were given a ton of time, and they promoted Bright Star, which is just a wonderful. But it's Steve Martin, and no offense to Benjamin, but he's not at that level yet. So to see him and hold his own and be so funny and so charming, and then they went and did the performance and did a number from the show, and he's bare-chested and sexy as hell, and with all the lighting and all the bells and whistles, it was so good I thought they were actually at the theater, but they weren't.
Wow.
And that's why I'm really excited for people to go see this. It's one of these shows that you cannot go in there with a preconceived notion of what it is, because it's about this, right. Because it's way beyond what it is on the surface.
Well, for me, I went to the press upfronts for that show, and I sat there with that look on my face, thinking, okay, I know what the movie was about. I understand what we're trying to do musically, so this is going to be fun to watch how this is going to all pull together. But I was just sitting there thinking, this has the potential of either being really, really great or really, really awful, because there's nowhere that you can middle step with the subject matter. And so to hear you be this excited about it tells me that we didn't half step.
No, I don't think you have step, and you have to see it all the way through for it to all come together. It's like I flash back, and Brian Darcy James was in it, the Lieutenant of Inishmaan. Right. And, I know somebody that, said, oh, I hate it. I walked out at the intermission. I said, well, then you can't say anything about it, because you have to see that play from beginning to end. It all comes together. It's one of the funniest scenes in the end. I don't, can't give it away, but this is this is like that in the sense of, if you wouldn't see the whole thing, which I don't understand anybody that doesn't see the whole show. I'm of the school that you go to the theater and it's like a little mini contract. It's maybe unsigned, but that you're going to be there. If it's 2 acts, you're going to stay for both acts, because you're going to miss something. I remember working at the Monkey Bar in 1981. I was there from 81 to 82, so I'm not exactly sure what it was. But we started at 10 o'clock. In those days, I think all the theaters were at 8. Yeah. And somebody walked in with a playbill in their hand, and I knew that they hadn't stayed for the whole show. And I said, what did you come from? And they said, Woman of the Year. And I said, and you left at intermission, shame on you. You missed the best scene, which is the grass is always greener. Sorry. And, it was like Marilyn Cooper won a Tony for that one scene in the beginning of Act 2. Yep. And I felt sorry for anybody that was stupid enough to walk out on it.
Jamie DeRoy with me here on the Curtain Call. So as you can tell, Jamie DeRoy loves her some theater. So the question then is, what was the spark that made you decide that you were going to basically find a way to dedicate your life to theater and making sure that it was going to be presented?
Well, early on, my dad, when I was quite young, had the opportunity to invest very little bit of money into the pajama game through a friend of his in Pittsburgh. So my parents went in for the opening. And then later on down the line, they took me to New York so I could see it. And thanks to Harold Prince, I got to go backstage, and I got to meet John Raitt, Janice Page, and Eddie Foy Jr. And, not only experience from great seats, but backstage, meeting the stars. I mean, I kind of knew I wanted to sort of do this because I was doing little, small theater, community theater and stuff in Pittsburgh. But that cemented it. And then the next show that Harold Prince did was Damn Yankees. So then I got to meet Gwen Verdon. And I mean, there was no going back at that point. Of course, I always thought I would be on stage, not helping people get on stage. But that's okay. I mean, that's just the way it went. When I came to New York and I had an opportunity to audition for, it was then AFA, which became IFA, Ashley Famous Agency became International Famous Agency, which became International Creative Management, ICM. I got an audition, and they said they were too full up in the musical theater department or in the theater department, but that they were looking for people in nightclubs. I had never sung in a nightclub other than, here and there, but nothing in what I would call an actual nightclub. But I had done The Drunkard off Broadway and on the road, and our musical director was Barry Manilow, and he was doing arrangements for me. We were working on some arrangements. I'm not even sure why we had this in mind, because I don't think we were thinking of actually doing an act, but I guess we were, because why would we be putting these songs together? And then I called him up and I said, oh my God, I just had this interview at ICM or AFA, and they want to book me in the mountains and stuff, and they asked me if I had charts, and I said I knew what they were, and I knew we didn't have them yet, so I need to get charts really fast. So he and Bill Inglis put all these charts together for me to create an act for me. Wow. And he was my first musical director, but. So I sort of got in it through the back door. But then the problem with that is that once you get into the nightclub end, they sort of look at you as a nightclub singer as opposed to a Broadway type performer. And it's hard to break that mold. And I worked a lot in that venue. And the one summer that I was probably... the worst decision of my life was that after having done The Drunkard and some various things, I was offered the stock company at Eaglesmere, Pennsylvania, and one of the shows was the Fantastics doing The Girl, and, which would have opened doors in the sense of, how many years that went on, that anybody that ever played that role, could go in and out of that show. Right. And I turned it down to do these nightclubs with my then so-called band. And even though it was fun and I made probably better money than I would have in summer stock, I look back and I go, I think that had I done that summer stock instead of the nightclub stuff, it would have put me in a different trajectory. And that was really the original trajectory that I'd wanted. So there's no going back. I realize that. And I know people say, oh, I have no regrets. Well, yeah, it's a little regret. I just would have liked to have known where it would have taken me. And, but I did a few off-Broadway shows, but, and again on the road and whatever. I mean, The Drunkard was just, great fun. I absolutely loved it. But it would have been fun to have that experience of having been on Broadway instead of just, being a producer on Broadway.
Wow. Jamie DeRoy with me here on the Curtain Call. That's really interesting that you had the beginnings of the career, but somehow, it's a very if-then moment. You know what I mean? Like you just went left instead of right. And look at where you are now. And where you are now, pretty damn fabulous.
Well, and sometimes it's circumstantial. I mean, I moved into this building in 91, and had I not moved into this building, who knows? Maybe I would not have met Jeffrey Richards. Who knows? I mean, I probably would have, because he was doing some work for a cabaret performer I knew. But I think it was more because I was in the building and I would run into him, et cetera, those kinds of things. But yeah, there's always one step that leads you to another step that takes you to, kind of where you are. And you wonder, gee, I wonder if I didn't show up to that event that night, if, how my life would have been like different. Wow. Hard to know.
But you have so many events to choose from. Like Jamie DeRoy and Friends, Broadway at Birdland. See, we got to tie it back. April 17th at 6 o'clock. It's a
Sunday night, which we don't usually really do. We usually do Monday nights, but Monday nights are really tough now, especially now, because every Monday night is a major, major charity event or award show. So I didn't want to do a Monday because I don't want to stand in the way of these performers, really getting to display their wares on a bigger venue and reach a bigger audience. I didn't always do these as a benefit, but once I started the Jamie DeRoy and Friends Cabaret Initiative, I just thought it just made sense to do it, because all my friends were doing this gratis anyway. So let them do it for gratis, but with a purpose. And the purpose really is that the actors were always covered, and a lot of certain people in show business, but the cabaret performer really was kind of like the forgotten performer. And now they're recognized as, you can call the Actors Fund now if you have a problem. And again, whether it's to help them find a job or train in something, or just, have a seminar on, how to regroup. It's like Career Transitions for Dancers has now merged with the Actors Fund, which is, I think, a brilliant thing. Yeah. Because there's just so many fundraising dollars out there, and for every different group to be going after the same thing is very difficult. So this way, it sort of puts it more under the same umbrella, and it makes it a little easier. It's not like there's a separate bank account for the Cabaret Initiative, and I'm sorry, but that initiative ran out, so we can't help you. Right. It's almost more of a recognition thing and an awareness thing, so that performers can be aware. I had a friend who, I got a phone call from my director that this friend was really having a hard time. She was suicidal. She had nowhere to turn. Could I give her a job, which I did. She just about wiped out my database the day she worked in my office. And I said, I want to give her work, but I can't put my business at risk. So I realized that she could cook, and I started to hire her I wasn't home to, have meals cooked. So we did things like making things and putting them in the freezer. I just found things for her to do. Then she got really sick. She was the first person I ever called about to the Actors Fund, and that's what gave me the idea that she's not the only person in cabaret that needs help. And they were just wonderful about it. But if she had called on her own, she never would have gotten anywhere. So anyway, that's what, kind of stirred the whole pot and got it brewing. And Joe Benincasa is the best guy in the world. I mean, I don't think that the Actors Fund could ask for a better CEO than Joe Benincasa. He works tirelessly. He's so good at raising money. And he's just so kind and generous. When Margaret Whiting was really at the end of her life, and she was at the actor's home at that point, we went out and did a birthday party for her. And Josh Adler took me around. I think it was Josh that took me around for just to see everything, every floor, and they're different. I mean, there's assisted living, and then there's really assisted living. I mean, so it's you can move there and you can be totally independent, or you can move there and be like Margaret, who was so not independent. And but at least she was among people that knew her and loved her and knew who she was, and it was, just to be there and to sing for her was kind of, it's almost like a life-changing experience that day. And that's another thing that helped cement what I wanted to do in the future. So
I love that. Jamie DeRoy with me here on the Curtain Call. And, you know, again, I love the whole idea that it is about reaching back and helping your fellow artist, which you've been a champion of, I would say, pretty much since the beginning of all of this, right?
Well, listen, for years and years and years, I was as they call it, a girl singer, mostly opening for comics. And then when, you know, the cabaret scene kind of exploded, you didn't have to open for anybody. You were the act. I mean, kind of like Reno Sweeney days. And that was like in 70, for me anyway, it was like 1975. So you were the sole act. And then I was allowed to be funny. When I was opening for a comic, I would get in trouble for being funny, but I never tried to be funny. Yeah. But then I was encouraged by some, you know, very savvy people in show business that I should go to be more funny. Then when I moved to LA, and I desperately wanted to open for Joan Rivers out there, and everybody said, you'll never do it. You remind people of her. And I remember that Eric Gold came to see me at the Belly Room, it was called, which was upstairs at the Comedy Store. And he said, you can have the job, but you can't do anything funny. I said, then I don't want the job. It doesn't pay enough to make me go backwards. I've been doing funny material. That's the direction I want to go in. I'm not a world-class singer. I'm an entertainer, and that's the way I want to go. So he said, let me talk to them, and they said, fine. So the first night that I opened for her at the Improv, I saw Edgar coming toward me, and I went, oh no, I'm getting fired. Too many laughs, because I was used to, you know, being yelled at. So he came over to me and said, fantastic, you can take the comedy even further. Joan loved it. You made it so easy for her to be on stage. And so for me, it was great. And then when we came back to New York and I opened for her at Michael's Pub, I don't know if I should tell this or not tell this, but, you know, he was so mean. Gil Weast, who owned the... I think when you don't treat performers well, then you have to take it.
Oh, Jamie DeRoy, another reason I love him.
So when Julie Wilson worked there, she would go and get a Coke at the bar and he would charge her. Who does that? The second show, there was nobody in the house. He made her do a show to the waiters. I mean, who does that? So you don't do it. If you aren't paid, you're going to do a second show. So I'm working with Joan. I asked her if she could get Gil to turn the house lights down, because when I saw people at Michael's Pub open for her, other singers, he never turned the house lights down, and they talked all through their act. So he comes in, she asks him, he says, no problem. And she says, oh, and by the way, I'd like a hamburger, medium rare, blah, 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 blah. And he comes back and he gives her the hamburger, and in front of him, she takes off the bun and she chops it up and she puts it down on the floor for Spike. And he was like, if you could have seen the expression on his face, because I'm sure he was thinking, if I knew it was for the dog, I wouldn't have given it to you. He walked out of the room and I kissed her. I said, you have no idea what you just did. And he goes, why? And I told her the story. Wow. And I said, because nobody else but you could have gotten away with that. And anyway, but it was really fun. And by the way, that young agent that saw me, Eric Gold, he went on to manage a few comics. One of them was Jim Carrey, who he became his manager and his executive producer. So I think he had a pretty good career.
Wow. Wow. Look at that. See, this is what you get when you come to the Curtain Call. You get everything. You get all of this dish that you would have never gotten. I wouldn't have gotten this if I hadn't asked you. Maybe at a cocktail party or something.
When I was young, and my sister-in-law had made a tie for my father, and I always felt very competitive with her because I thought she was smarter than I was and all these things. And I thought, well, she can make a tie, I can make a tie. So I made a tie, and then I started to make a lot of ties. And then I gave one to Sid Davidoff, who was a really good friend of mine. He's working for Mayor Lindsay. And he said to me, do you have more of these? And I said, well, you can have more if you want. He said, no, bring them down to City Hall. I'll send you around the offices with my assistant Squirt, and you can sell them to the guys. So I got into everybody's office except Lindsay, and everybody wore Jamie original ties. But Squirt, his real name was Jeffrey Katzenberg. So people, everybody has to start somewhere.
Oh my God. This gives me hope that there might still be a moment for me, Jamie. Oh my God. Oh my God. Well, gosh. Again, we could sit here all day and talk, but she's got things to do because she's busy. Busy. It's great. Jamie DeRoy, go see her show, Jamie DeRoy and Friends, at Birdland, Broadway at Birdland, Sunday, April 17th at 6 o'clock. She's got a lineup of people: David Friedman, Corey Kehaney, and Kenjay, Howard McGillen, Brad Oscar, and then Robert Creighton from Cagney. It's going to be a very lively evening of artists getting to do what they love to do, and at the same time helping other artists, which I think is even the best part about all of this. It's like family supporting family. So if you are in New York, April 17th, go and see Jamie DeRoy and Friends, April 17th at 6 p.m. Also, too, if you want to help out on some of the other productions, I just saw one of the plays that she's producing, Exit Strategy, over at Primary Stages. Didn't tell her. Really fun. Really good. Thought-provoking, fabulous. So again, you can come see shows that Jamie DeRoy has her hands on. So there's lots of things that you can do. Go to jamiederoy.com, actually. No, yes? Yeah, jamiederoy.com to find out more about her and everything else that she's got connected, because she's got lots of stuff going on, people. I'm telling you. Fantastic. So again, Jamie DeRoy and Friends, Broadway at Birdland, April 17th, 6 p.m. Don't miss it. And we will be back.